Hello,
Hello, everyone.
Beth. Hi, people joining us. Okay, I'm verifying from my phone that we are actually live. Looks like we're close.
We are live.
All right. Okay.
Perfect.
Let's do a little chit chat before people hop on. Give them a little time.
Sounds good.
Give us like the quick nutshell update on Lachlan.
Oh, well, this has been a busy week for diabetes in our house. As I just was mentioning to you before, Lachlan is 17, and tonight he just had an adult transition to adulthood. His hospital gave a live Zoom call on that. So he is now entering that stage, and he just got his first Omnipod Dash pump. So he has never worn a pump before in 8 years. So he is on day 4 of using the pump. So that has been a great experience this week. So lots of new things. We just changed the new pump about 20 minutes ago.
Okay.
So lots to learn still.
He's doing his right now as we speak. He's changed.
Good.
Oh, hello from Singapore. Yay.
Oh, exciting.
Okay. So to the audience joining us, this is a first for me. I think I'd prefer to speak to a room full of 1,000 people than go live on Facebook. But I hope you find value in what we're attempting to do tonight. Obviously, you all know it's World Diabetes Month, diabetes awareness. Every foundation and association is running with their own message. And this is our 8th year talking about how a low-carb diet can benefit anyone with diabetes. And I guess my goal now is to just bring valuable information to the people who choose this method. Back when we started River on a low-carb diet, there wasn't the information abundantly available like there is now. And I feel like it's becoming more commonplace that people are dabbling with a low-carb diet or maybe doing a low-carb dinner or just a low-carb breakfast. So the more momentum we make in our movement, it's just important to me to bring some free information to parents out there. I'd like to introduce you all to my friend Beth McNally. Beth is they live in Canada, Beth and Matt. They've been to the Blue Ball in South Dakota twice now. And we hit it off great. I mean, my husband's name is Matt. I'm Bethany. We jive. We both have teenage boys who are athletic and hunky, and they're bold kids. And so we bonded instantly. And I'm a big fan of Beth's work. She hosts courses through her company, T1D Nutrition. And I was scrolling along the other day and saw that she has all these new add-on topics. And I shot them a message and asked if they would be willing to share that with our audience, just to get people started. And so tonight, really our goal, and I'd love your feedback, please comment. If you enjoy this, I might be bold enough to try and do it more often. There are people all over the world that I think you would like to hear from, and I know them and I would love to host them. So please leave comments if this is something you're interested in. But I thought we would start out tonight by addressing the number one comment I see from people who haven't been fully exposed to the education behind a low-carb diet. And that comment is that they believe kids won't grow without carbohydrates. That's kind of the first rebuttal that parents get or patients get when they see their endocrinologist or a dietitian. They just say kids need carbs to grow. Parents who are scared leave the hospital and think, oh my goodness, I have to give them carbs or they won't grow. And we know that's not true. River is a walking example that that's not true. And Lachlan's a walking example that that's not true. But I know as scared parents, you need something more to grasp onto than two moms telling you that our kids grew properly. So that's my goal tonight, is to give you science and reasoning behind why no one needs carbs, but what you do need to provide your child to get them to grow in a healthy way. So I would like to turn it over. Beth is going to do a very short course on the proper nutrition for a child. And then when she's done, we're inviting our teenage boys to join us and answer some questions. So I can see your comments on my computer screen. Please ask questions, and I'll be watching those as Beth presents this information to us.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Bethany. Thank you for having us. And it's so great to be with you all. I thought that what I would do tonight is take a little bit of time and show you walk you through a few slides and some information about what we need to feed our children to make sure that they can grow. And I know, Bethany, I don't know how you were when you first started this, but my biggest concern, we started back in 2015, but my biggest concern was, okay, we have normalized blood sugars by changing Lachlan's diet, but I'm just not sure if this is okay. Like, what if he doesn't grow? What if everything else doesn't happen? Were you worried about that?
I mean, it's scary. It's because we lack support from the people who are trained to give us support, the ones we're taught to trust. It is a scary road, even though there are now thousands of people you can follow who are doing well. It's tough to navigate, and yep, it's scary to take that leap, and I definitely share that with you.
Yeah. And so I thought, one of the reasons that I started working in this field was because I remember what it felt like. And I just wish that we had other resources that we could turn to know that everything would be okay. Mm-hmm. So I would love to share a little bit about what you can think about to make sure that your child can grow. And I'll just share a few slides with you, and then we'll look at a couple of River's meals. So you can sort of see what River's eating and what the nutrients are in his food. And then we'll look at a day of, I just recorded Lachlan's, I just put down what he ate yesterday. We're like, okay, let's look at what Lachlan ate yesterday. And, I'm not trying to make it look perfect. This is what he ate. So what were the nutrients that he ate? And then we'll have the boys come and talk to everybody. So let's talk about what we'll cover tonight. I think we can all agree as T1D caregivers that it can be complicated to do the work of an organ. And when we talk about nutrition, as part of this, nutrition can seem complicated too. And some days it feels complicated to me. So this field of nutrition is prone to, heated debate. As we know, people can have differing opinions, and those are tied to ingrained beliefs, and food and diet, they can be deeply personal. Plus, research on nutrition has conflicting results, so no wonder we're confused. And then you layer in type 1 diabetes, a medical condition that results in its own very unique nutrition problem. But nutrition doesn't have to be hard, and I hope I can share that with you tonight. So if we can simplify things for a moment and just pare this down to the essentials, what should we focus on as parents? So how can we make food and diabetes, how can we use food to make diabetes more predictable and easier to manage, and make sure that our children grow to their full potential? So simply put, we need foods that make them grow and thrive. And number 2, that have less effect on blood glucose. So foods for growth and foods to make it safer to allow us to safely strive for normal blood glucose. So tonight, I'm just going to do one small portion just to focus on essential nutrients for kids to grow and develop. And to provide you with some context, because you have to have a little background in this, I'll start by talking about nutrients for human health. And so at the end, please feel free to ask questions or put them in the chat as we go, and we'll save some time for those at the very end. So let's start by reviewing the basic principles of nutrition for human health. So in order to survive and thrive as a human being, your child needs to take in adequate energy, which means they need to eat enough food and certain nutrients. And this applies to all people, including those living with type 1 diabetes. And these nutrients are organized into macronutrients, micronutrients, and water. And they're categorized as protein, fat, carbohydrate, vitamins, and minerals, and water. And these are the elements that we need to survive and thrive. So when we eat protein, fat, and carbohydrate, these foods break down into, respectively, amino acids, fatty acids, and glucose. And I want to tackle protein first because proteins are the building blocks of the human body, and we're trying to grow children here. So you can think of protein as worker molecules that carry out the work in our cells. And there are several 100,000 different proteins in our body, and they do many things. So proteins create, grow, and repair tissue like muscles, connective tissue, hair, skin, nails. They also contract muscles, they give shape to our skin, they help us to digest food. And protein's main role is actually not as an energy source for cells. So that's mainly the job of glucose and fat, because the body depends on protein for so many other things. The body will turn to protein as an energy source only when it needs to. So now on to the role of fats, which are also referred to as lipids. So like glucose, fat is another energy source for our cells to help make energy to carry out their work. So fats also provide a means for us to store energy, and fat molecules also help us absorb vitamins like vitamins A, D, E, and K, provide structural materials for our cells to be healthy, and help produce hormones and provide insulin for our organs so that we can regulate our body temperature. So carbohydrates' main role is to be used as a source of energy for our cells to carry out their work. And when eaten, carbs break down into one sugar molecules, and glucose is the most abundant one sugar molecule. So glucose is the main circulating sugar in our blood and in the blood of other mammals. And did you know that in an adult male, there is estimated to be only 4 grams of glucose, which is 1 teaspoon, in the entire bloodstream? I think about that a lot sometimes when Lachlan's treating hypoglycemia. At any one point in a healthy human, there's not a lot of blood glucose in the bloodstream. So some nutrients are essential, while others are non-essential. And what does essential even mean? Well, you can think about essential nutrients as meaning essential for life. So we need to eat these to survive, and our body cannot make these on our own. On the other hand, we do not need to eat non-essential nutrients because our bodies can internally make these molecules when they're needed. So let's take a look at the essential nutrients. And these are the nutrients and the foods our children need to eat to grow and develop. So protein foods are essential because when we eat protein, it gets broken down into individual amino acids. And 10 of those amino acids are classified essential because the body cannot make them. We have to eat them to give our body access to them. And the foods that are highest in essential amino acids include eggs, dairy, fish, poultry, and beef. So they're also essential fatty acids. And you'll often hear that it's important to get your omega-3s and your omega-6s. And before I did my graduate degree, I was like, I don't even know what that means. So this is because human bodies do not house the enzymes needed to synthesize to form these specific fatty acids. So we need to eat foods high in omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, such as fatty fish or avocado, various nuts and seeds, olive oil, and eggs. And we must also eat small quantities of vitamins and minerals. Otherwise, we can experience everything from scurvy to night blindness, anemia, to stunted growth. So key nutrients for growing children include all the vitamins and minerals. They're all essential. Minerals like iron, zinc, and copper, and selenium, and calcium, and magnesium, and vitamins like folate and the rest of the B vitamins, and vitamins A and D, they're all especially needed for bone health and for growth. And on a side note, it's also really important that our children get adequate sleep and lots of exercise. Sleep and exercise are key to growth and to developing strong bones. Now, you may notice that only 5 of our 6 categories of nutrients are listed as essential. So what happened to the 6th category, carbohydrate? So as I mentioned earlier, carbs are predominantly broken down into glucose molecules, which are used by the body as a source of energy. However, the body can supply its own glucose for its energy needs. So let me explain that a little bit. So glucose in the body comes from 2 sources. So first, glucose can come from outside the body. So when we eat carb-containing foods like donuts or oatmeal or fruits and veggies, the carbs in those foods are a source of glucose. And those foods are digested and broken down into 1 sugar molecules, and the glucose molecules directly enter the bloodstream. But if our body requires glucose, a second source of glucose can be secreted internally from inside the body. And our liver is responsible for making new glucose or breaking down stored glucose when it receives signals that the body requires it. And you will see this sometimes on your child's CGM at nighttime when they haven't eaten in a long time. And suddenly their glucose rises. And you know that that's the liver dumping glucose into the bloodstream. So glucose comes from both the carbohydrate foods we eat and from our liver. Both sources supply glucose for our bodies to use. And because of this, humans do not need to eat carbs to survive. So as long as you eat enough protein and fat, dietary carbohydrate is not required in the diet. The liver can produce glucose for the body if required. Now, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't eat carbs. This is simply making the point that they are not essential for life. So you may have heard that kids need carbs to grow. But I want to reassure you that carbohydrate is a non-essential nutrient for humans. We can get our essential nutrients from other food sources as long as we eat enough foods containing protein and fat. So if you want to learn more about the science behind carbs not being an essential nutrient, I have a video on my T1D Nutrition blog on my website or on my T1D Nutrition Facebook page that explains this in more detail. And you might find that video helpful to watch. So what we need to think about when we think about growing children and carbs are two things. First, how many essential vitamins and minerals do those foods contain so we can have our children grow properly? And we want to select carbohydrates that have minimal impact on blood glucose levels because we want to make diabetes easier to manage. And if we want to strive for normal blood glucose levels, this is the safest way to be able to do that. So, any nutrition plan that we're looking for type 1 diabetes has to include protein to get our minerals and vitamins and essential amino acids, and healthy fats, which also include vitamins and minerals, and in this case, essential fatty acids. And then we want carbohydrate foods that don't spike blood glucose. And we want them to be also nutrient dense in vitamins and minerals. Just before we get to looking at the nutrients in River and Lachlan's meals, and I know because now everybody's seen the dog, everybody really wants to get there. I want to share a list of superfoods that include essential nutrients and energy for growth. So all the information covered this evening, including a list of superfoods for those managing type 1 diabetes via a low-carb nutritional approach, is included in my Essential Nutrients for Growing Children guide. So this guide is a feature of the Nutrition Effect program, and I'm also providing it to anyone participating in tonight's session with access to this guide. So I'm going to put a link below in the comments so that you can download the guide for yourself too and get some of those ideas for superfoods, which is something that I help my clients with a lot because sometimes we want a lot of bang for our buck in the foods that we serve our children because they cross a lot of the minerals and vitamins off when we serve them to our children. Now, just before we take a look at some meals and the essential nutrients that they contain, I also want to share a few insights about how to know if your child is getting what they need from the foods they eat. And this is the question I probably hear the most, from parents that I see. So besides going to regular doctor's checkups to see if your child is growing as expected, there are a few ways that you can assess whether your child's food intake is meeting their needs. And it can be a little bit less complicated than we may sometimes feel. So first, consider whether your child is getting enough food to eat to meet their body's needs. And your child's body will give them and you cues. So if your child is often hungry, they may need more food. And as simple as this sounds, it's easy for us as parents to sometimes not realize when our children may need more food because they're at school for a lot of the day. So I encourage parents to casually, ask your child about their hunger levels. So if your child is, mildly hungry at mealtime and ready to eat without urgency, this is a good sign. It's normal to feel a little hungry just before you sit down for your meal. But if your child tells you they're very hungry, whether they say this often or before or during a growth spurt, that is a sign that they need more energy. You may hear their stomach rumble, or you may notice they have lower energy than usual. They may be really anxious to eat at mealtime because they're so hungry, or sometimes they'll act irritable, a little hangry. Those can be signs and nuances of their hunger. And that is signaling to you to say, okay, I may need to actually, feed this child a little more food. And I also encourage parents of children with T1D to make sure that your child is getting regular checkups done to test for celiac disease and to test for thyroid health with a full thyroid panel. Hopefully your doctor will agree to that, as both of those conditions will affect growth and metabolism. And finally, I often find that many families find it a challenge to get enough food into their children, particularly during the preteen or teenage years, but this can really affect children of any age. I remember when our daughter was in kindergarten, and she would just talk all the way through school lunch and come home at the end of the day with a full lunch, not eaten at all. So I encourage families, to try to help with not being able to get enough food into their child, to really focus on food when their child is with them at home. So at breakfast time and at dinner time. And a hearty breakfast with lots of protein is important to fuel their brains and bodies for the day ahead and lay a good nutritional foundation first thing in the morning. And a challenge that many have, which is completely understandable, is to build a morning routine that includes adequate time for breakfast. And if you start to do this in your child's younger years, it can be a really good foundation for their teen years, because many teenagers tend to skip meals, and that really affects their growth and their mood at that age as well. Finally, sometimes the child, may be getting adequate food at meals, but just needs to do more to eat during the day in terms of how many times they eat a day, especially if that child is an athlete and needing more energy to be active. And maybe Bethany and River, they can give us some ideas for the eating habits and schedule that River has, to make sure he can perform athletically at such a high level. But I do encourage parents to see where in the schedule could their child eat another meal, or could they work with the school to add in another snack if there's athletics right after school and they need some time to build in at that time too. So those are all just some tips and insights about what you can also do, because it's very important that your child gets enough energy. And most of the children that I see are getting adequate energy. And then there are some children who are doing really, really well. But when I work with their parents, we realize that, they're hungry and they just need a little bit more food throughout the day, and that can be planned for. So just before I turn it back to Bethany, River, and Lachlan will come in too, let's take a look at something that I hope you'll find interesting. And here's where I'm really sorry, Bethany, I can't remember your dog's name.
Lisa.
Oh, he's so cute. I know he's a big hit. So I asked Bethany to share some of River's meals with us. So you can see examples of meals that River would eat. So these are examples of, I believe, 3 dinners that River's had in the past. And actually, Bethany, do you mind describing what's on the plate here? I think, you're the person who put it together. It'd be sort of nice for us to hear from you.
Sure. The first image is a filet mignon with broccoli, and then those are bacon-wrapped jalapeno poppers. The middle meal is asparagus, broccolini, and then 2 chicken breasts. That was a meal he ate out at a restaurant. And that final meal is a protein pasta with meatballs and sugar-free tomato sauce, and then 2 pieces of low-carb garlic cheese bread and broccoli.
Okay, that looks really good. So what I did was I took the meals that Bethany provided, and I just plugged them into the app called Chronometer. There are different apps that you can use. I really like this one because it tends to be a little bit more accurate. And then I just put, dinner 1, dinner 2, dinner 3, and I'm getting an idea of, what are the essential nutrients that are in these different meals? Because a lot of people worry that what our children are eating is our meals from the ketogenic diet. And we are not actually feeding our children ketogenic in the classic ketogenic way. We are actually adding in a lot more protein than the ketogenic diet had, and we're not at that very high level of fat. And so it is a very different way of eating than the ketogenic diet. And sometimes I worry that people go, to their medical team and say, I'm eating a ketogenic diet. And their doctor thinks, oh no, I read it, I was taught about that in medical school. And in the very early days of the classic ketogenic diet, some of those children had growth issues. And we actually have a very nutrient dense way of eating with the proteins, essential fatty acids, and the vitamins and minerals we have. So let's actually take a look at what those 3 dinners come out to when we're looking at the essential nutrients. So you can see here that on the protein side, we have all of these beautiful essential amino acids that you can see, and you can see that through these meals, they're meeting 100% of River's needs. And then we also have essential fatty acids. So here we're looking at the omega-3s and omega-6s. And it can be really hard to actually get enough omega-3s in your diet sometimes, unless you're having a whole food way of eating. And that's what those meals showed on the last slide that we had that River was eating. And then look at all the essential vitamins and minerals. So the first, this is a very small screen, I'm sorry, but look at all of the vitamins that are listed on that side, and look at all of the minerals that are listed below. And, you will never have all vitamins and minerals ever ticked off fully. My hardest assignment in grad school of nutrition was we actually had to find a day's worth of meals that would meet every single vitamin and mineral. And you can't do that on a daily basis. You have to do it over multiple days. But I just wanted to give you an idea of, Bethany's just serving this. This is just real enjoyable food to River. And this is the foods that he enjoys eating. And they also happen to have all of the essential nutrients that he needs to grow and thrive. And he's even doing it, as a high-level athlete. So I hope this reassures you that there are many ways that you can use food in order to make sure that your child is as healthy as possible. And my son's timing is perfectly aligned to the way I finished. So, hi, Locke.
Hi, Locke.
Hi.
So 2 other quick things. Bethany really wanted me to give an example of a food that you could eat out at a restaurant and still have it be nutrient dense. So these are 2 Taco Bell Power Bowls. Can I ask you, River, would you have eaten those in the same sitting?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay,
Each
perfect.
4 at a time, Beth.
Perfect. Okay, I'm just going to actually give one of my AirPods to Locke too. And Locke, so see, this is Taco Bell Power Bowls, if I'm correct. Locke would often eat 2 too when he was swimming at the time too. So here we have like a lettuce base, and then we have cheese and sour cream and some veggies on top, and beef and chicken. And you can even see the energy here. So 1,300 and some calories, which is able to meet as a meal River's energy needs, and then a whole bunch of vitamins and minerals. So this is a perfect example of something that you can get on the fly and still have it be really nutritious and dense. Okay, so just one last thing. This has just happened to be what Lachlan ate yesterday. So this was a 1-day food, his breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I know you can't see that very well. I'm just trying to show you how we can actually put this together so we know that everybody is eating well and meeting their needs. And then it just really allows me, every once in a while, I go in and do this and just make sure that Lachlan is getting everything that he needs on these days. So this is just another example of a really nutrient dense set of foods that he can eat throughout the day. And that's all that we have. Oh yeah, one last thing too. The picture in the middle is Lachlan when he was 9 years old, which was a few months before being diagnosed. And as Bethany and I mentioned at the start of this, our one concern was, will they grow? Like, is there anything that we're doing that will not allow our children to grow to their full potential? And I just also want to reassure you that Lachlan has been able to do everything he's ever wanted from an athletic and academic and regular everyday life perspective. And I'm very grateful, actually, for this way of eating, because I actually think our whole family is more healthy now that we have adopted this way of life.
Same. Absolutely.
Okay.
Wow.
So we are now into Q&As.
Okay.
Oh, you want to say yours?
Okay.
There, a couple of questions have come in that I think are really valuable to talk about before we engage the boys. One person asked, how should we describe this way of eating to our doctor? Because we know they're going to jump to you're eating keto, that's dangerous, DKA. Do you want to give your answer and then I'll give my answer?
Sure. So one thing I do encourage families to do, and I think every family needs to make their own decision because some families, have different views on this. But I do encourage people to be honest about what they're doing. I do think we need to help, educate our medical providers and also, reassure them. And so some people go in and they say, oh, we're eating a whole foods way of eating. Our family says, we eat a very low carbohydrate way of eating, and Lachlan gets lots of protein and lots of fat to meet his energy needs. The only reason that I suggest that people don't mention it as a ketogenic diet is because sometimes people say, well, if you reduce the carbs enough, it's a ketogenic diet. But when we're trained in our education programs, a ketogenic diet is really associated with a classic ketogenic diet for epilepsy, where the original intent was to try to put the person in replicating a fasted state to try to have seizures stop. So we're not trying to achieve that. We're trying to achieve normal blood glucose levels. It's very different. And the way that the food actually is put together is very different. Much higher levels of protein so that the children can grow. And protein was reduced on a classic ketogenic diet. Mm-hmm. So some people like to say low carb, high protein is how they describe the way that we eat when we're children. Adults may be doing slightly different things. There are many different ways that you can do a low carb approach, but most of us are doing low carb, high protein.
Right. I agree. I'm hesitating as to whether or not I should give my American answer. I agree with you that honesty is obviously the best, but I know too closely that there are situations that are just not pleasant in a doctor's office. And in that situation, I really like to say that we grow a garden and we eat vegetables and we buy half a cow and we use meat from our uncle who has a farm, and my husband has celiac, so we don't keep wheat flour in the house. And there are, obviously I'm giving you the maneuvered response. Ideally you would say we eat real food that's great on blood sugars. But if you need to dodge that question, I think that no one can argue with an American family who's eating vegetables grown from a garden and meats that are hunted or donated, or, what works for your family. I do think we're making progress, and I don't think it's such an issue anymore, but back in the day when we started, it was a little tougher to talk about, honestly.
Yeah, and I think it still is. I do see a lot of families who are really struggling, and so I agree. It's not always easy, and I hope that we can continue to work in the clinical field to make those changes.
Right. Okay, I'm going to ask the boys a question. It came into me through a private group. The biggest thing that people seem to ask are, what's it like to be different than your friends? And what's it like to go out to eat with your friends? And how do you manage those types of situations? You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. It's pretty different. Like, my friends have known for years and they still ask new questions every single day. Like, oh my God, you can't eat bread? Like, but I don't really mind it at all. Like, again, they're just curious. They're just trying to understand, like, my condition and what they can do to also help in case I ever need it. And if I'm being completely honest, eating out, it is still pretty difficult. Now, I still choose to eat the way I eat because it gives me the best blood sugars, and therefore I won't have complications or feel terrible. But if I'm going to be completely honest, it is very difficult, and each day is a new challenge, and it's just something that you kind of just have to bear through, and it's just one of the sacrifices to live a healthy lifestyle with this condition.
Is it challenging because there aren't as many easy options in Canada? Forgive me, because I don't know what type of fast food places, or is it awkward because everyone's ordering a pizza and you have to figure something else out?
Other than just pizza, it's actually really easy. I can get a burger, just take off the bun. I can get a salad. I can turn things into a salad bowl. It's really, really easy. It's more just seeing all the other food that people are eating, and like I just want to eat that as well, and just to experience that, because it's just such a broad range of other different foods that I don't know what they're like. So that's what I would say is difficult about it, but I think that finding low carb food to eat out is really, really easy and manageable.
Okay. River, will you answer the same?
Yeah, I would say that when I had just at the beginning when I started going out to eat with my friends, I had to take on more questions, like why can't you eat these certain things, and that was really about it. But now they're all pretty used to it and just think of it as normal as well. And sometimes they even go as far to not get burgers on or buns on their burgers as well. So I actually, I don't know.
Yeah, when you were like 8 or 9, every lunch includes one whole English cucumber cut up. How many of your friends started bringing cucumbers for lunch?
A couple. Yeah, sometimes I'll share my cucumber. It's a lot, but.
Mm-hmm. And when you go out to eat with friends, do you find that hard, or do you think there's enough options, or what's your feeling?
No, there's definitely plenty of options. It's pretty easy now, I would say, because of the variety of foods that there are.
Right. And I mean, you've grown up with people watching what you're doing, and so people are very accommodating when you're invited to their houses. Mm-hmm. People usually have things for River to eat. Let's see if there's another question. Can you guys see questions? River, do you see anything? To a newly diagnosed toddler, there's a page that you should follow. Why can't I think of it at the time? Best T1 day ever. Mirabelle was diagnosed as a toddler. She has a twin brother. They both eat low carb. I would consult her about basal doses and how they started working our insulin in for meals. She's the expert, but it's very much doable for a toddler. And honestly, they don't know anything different. They don't know what other kids eat at that age. And so if you get them started young, I really think it's easier. Corey Cedar asked earlier today, of each of you boys, what is one thing that you learned because you have diabetes that you didn't otherwise know? It's a deep one. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I would say that the main thing that I learned is that you really carbs aren't necessary to grow. You can grow with all the other stuff that you get out of food and not just carbs. So you can phase out all of that.
And how was it taking your school health class when you had to read that you need this many carbs in your diet?
I mean, it was awkward because I kind of prove otherwise, but it's not like I'm going to say anything.
No, I know. Do you have an answer for that, Locke?
Yeah, I'd probably just say that just because I have type 1 diabetes, it doesn't mean that I'm physically, kind of what River's saying, but I'm not physically limited. I can still run, jump, do all I can still play sports at a very high level. I can compete with everyone. I'm not at any disadvantage just because I have type 1 diabetes, and it really just it shouldn't be looked at as something to limit you. You can still do everything that everyone else can. I don't know. That's what I would say.
That's great. I mean, you two have achieved so much athletically. And had we listened and followed what we were supposed to do, there's no way you could have played tennis competitively. I mean, hours, some summer weekends, River plays 15 hours of tennis in that weekend alone. So we're getting a question to go over, how do you prepare if you're going to swim? What is the key to having good blood sugars while you're an athlete?
Okay, so our kind of plan, and again, it's really difficult because every day is always different. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. But for us, we would do a little less insulin for meal times. And like at lunchtime, if I had like a 4 p.m. practice, I would do 50% of my lunchtime insulin. And I would make sure I had some sort of protein shake or food going into my swim so that would be able to hold me from going low. And if I did go low, I would just quickly hop out, take some sugar, wait till I rise, and I'd go back in like nothing happened. But every day is different. That's how we would approach sports. I played football this year, and it was completely different.
Oh,
So,
right.
unfortunately, you just have to find whatever works for you. We found that cutting the basil in half. Yeah, you can. So today I had a football game, and it was really, really stressful. It was a playoff game. Where's the camera?
Right there.
And that was my graph during it. You almost can't even tell that I was playing a 2-hour football game at
Wow.
high intensity, under pressure. So I mean yeah.
Here's
So
Beth. He went to training today, but
yeah.
love it.
So it's worked for us, but there's been a lot of trial and error, and even still every day we make mistakes, but that's completely normal.
Yeah. And Locke got, I had mentioned this earlier, Locke got a pump for the first time on Monday. So one thing that is been a bit mind-blowing to us this week is to be able to suspend insulin during training, which, that's in itself is sort of life-changing because, once the insulin is injected, it's live, right? And so you have to just adapt with food and potentially with glucose. So we are looking forward to him experimenting with the ability to suspend insulin too, because this year he's playing many different sports that he doesn't have a lot of experience in managing his blood sugars during those sports. But being a fat adapted athlete just allows you to play for hours and have more stable blood sugars.
Absolutely. Rip, do you want to talk about what you do for tennis? What's the big thing we try to avoid?
Well, low. We tried to avoid lows.
We just make sure he has zero insulin on board.
Yeah.
And I manipulate that through his loop, which I'm happy to do a different Facebook Live about looping because that's a whole new beast.
Override.
Yep, and we use overrides on loop. That's for another day, but the biggest thing for us is to avoid insulin on board. It just dawned on me, you guys, I stopped and threw my old lady readers on to look at the comments, and there are a lot of kids watching you guys right now with their parents. What would you say to the 8-year-old version of yourself or the 9-year-old version? What would you tell the kids who are out there right now who are looking at you guys as role models? Do you have any advice for them?
I could go first. I would just say that you're still completely normal. You're not limited to anything. You can still do everything a normal kid can do. The only difference is you just have to watch a bit of what you eat and take a couple shots here and there. But if I was an 8-year-old freaked out learning that I had diabetes, I would probably just tell myself that I'm still the same person I am, and I'm still capable of anything else that a non-diabetic person is.
Totally.
I second that.
Come on, give us a little more.
Yeah, definitely keep doing what you're doing. It'll pay off a lot, especially, no matter what you do, being low carb will pay off and you will feel much better. And it's really no different than if you were to eat normal food. So there's nothing to be ashamed of in being low carb.
Right. And before this live that we're hosting, Matt and Beth and I were talking, and for us now, I would say food is the easiest part of diabetes. Preparing the food, adapting to eating that food. So stick with it, be patient. It takes a bit for a child to change their palate, but it is absolutely worth it. We do not argue about food choices. That's very peaceful in our house. Do you see any more questions that you guys?
I think just to mention, to reiterate that it can seem daunting. It seemed daunting to me. I know actually Jill asked a question earlier today where she said, what was it like at the beginning when your family decided to go low carb? And, were you and your husband on the same page? And I don't know if you remember a lot because you were young,
Slightly.
but do you remember? And, Dad was like, okay, we have to do this. Like, there are no two ways about this. And the reason that we did it is because your blood sugars went high and low all day long, and we thought we were doing something wrong. And we were like, why are we so bad at this? And, I said, okay, well, we have to do something, but if we completely change the way we eat, like, we're not going to be like anyone else. Like, Lachlan's going to feel left out, and then this is going to just, like, it seems hard. And, my husband was just, we need to do this. So we did it. And after a day, I said, oh, like, of course, this makes sense. And we just have to learn how to do it. It's a skill we need to develop, and it's knowledge we need to gain. And it's like, it's sort of like riding a bike. You don't know how to do it at the beginning, but then you just keep doing it, and then it all makes sense. And then the flow-on effect is that other parts of diabetes get easier to manage because you've taken out the fluctuations from the food. So if there's a growth spurt, or if there's an infection or some kind of illness coming on, it's so much easier to see and then adapt to those things that occur in type 1 diabetes. Right. And so I would say I fully understand the hesitation, and I do see it a lot, where one member of the parenting team wants it and another is hesitant, and it's completely understandable. And we just really need to talk about, what do we ultimately want to achieve? Like, I sort of look at it, and it didn't occur to me at the time, but I guess it's the greatest gift we could have given our children.
Absolutely. And for us, you've heard our story a million times. The first day we changed his diet, I had never seen such peace for both of us. Just sleeping through the night, not chasing him with a juice box, which was what I used to do. It just, all that chaos. We were hooked on that feeling. I have to point out, Lester Hightower is one of the people who commented very early on when we were switching our diet, and he said, "Go Gators." Ruth's got his Gators on and his Gators. But he gave me the courage. I posted, I took their advice. River ate low carb for a day. I posted a graph, and our Dexcom, I had the low set at like 100 and the high set at 300, right? Because I was scared to death of crashing lows, and I would be getting alarms all day long if I had it any lower. And Lester was the one who gave me the confidence. He said, lower that upper limit. You don't need to, you're working your way down. Use your tools, use the technology, and bring those numbers into a tighter range. And the joy for both of us, and I don't mean to be selfish here, but as a parent and a lover of my child, to have that peace in our house and to see him happy, and it was overwhelming. And so we never looked back. I did read in one of my local support groups on Facebook today, someone I don't know made a comment that she asked her 11-year-old son, "Okay, you're going to a birthday party. Would you rather have the cupcake and maybe you have to sit out a little bit and have to stop on the trampoline or take insulin or take juice?" And he said, "No, I'd really rather not do that. I want to go play for a few hours." So I think sometimes too, we underestimate children and their ability to make logical decisions. I don't want someone else to define normal for me. I'm a capable parent who can decide what's best for my kid and our life. And I feel like the constant message on mainstream, the ADA, JDRF, it isn't a strong message. It's a message of despair, and our kids are suffering, and we need a cure. And I know my opinion isn't going to sit well with a lot of people, but I look to strength, and I look to be challenged and made better when I'm online looking for support groups. So that's kind of, we found some leaders, we found some friends early on, and they inspired us. And here we are now, 8 years later.
Yeah. And I asked Lachlan, because birthday parties come up a lot at, I think I saw a comment about Halloween, right? How do we deal with Halloween? And birthday parties come up a lot in our parent discussions. So I went and I asked Lachlan, and I said, when we went to birthday parties when you were young, what do you remember? And I think you said to me, I don't really remember. and I was stressed as a mom, is he gonna, and, because we would always make him a cupcake and he would take it. And I thought, okay, how's this going to go? But he doesn't really remember now, all these years later.
No.
And for Halloween, it's a pretty hard one, but we made a pretty funny system where I would trade in one piece of candy for like 10 cents. So then at least it was still fun and it felt like I had a reason for going out, even though I couldn't eat the candy. And then my friends would love me 10 times more because then I'd give it all to them after. So although you may not be able to eat it at Halloween, it's just as fun.
Right. And there's so many, we talked about the real food plates that I provided you in photos, and we didn't even talk about all of the options that are just so readily available now that are, a prepackaged snack or a low-carb piece of candy. While that's not what we're feeding them all day long, it's available now. There are so many low-carb substitutions you can put in a Halloween bucket, or trade it out for money, or trade it out for a toy. Or River used to walk up to houses and they would try and give him candy, and he would say, "Oh, no, thanks." Do you remember that?
And they would not hand them like we had something to give them.
We gave them something? Yeah. I don't know. He had fun with it.
Yeah,
right.
We had something.
Right. But you find your fun.
Yeah. Right. Even last night I came home with a Lily's chocolate bar, and I was like, "Here, Locke." Like, he was passing out. We give out sugar-free gum, so he was passing those out, and I'm like, "Here, here's something for you for Halloween," even though you're 17.
I loved it.
Awesome.
That's part of my day.
All right. Well, we are at 50 minutes into this live. I'm barely able to keep up with the comments, plus my old lady eyes don't work so well. I can't read everything. I'm going to try and go in and answer some comments, or show us some love right now if you want something like this again. I think we could talk all night because we love our kids. We love helping people. We want the best. I hope you see that from our foundation, is that we want everyone to be healthy, happy, successful, and we want to avoid diabetes, the complications of diabetes, and we fully believe that this is the way to do it. So I want to say thank you to you guys. I could talk forever.
Thank you. Yes. And if anyone has questions, like I see a lot of questions related to different food, you can email me, Beth at t1dnutrition.com, and any way that would be helpful to your family. We are all here for you. We are all in this community because we just want what's best for the kids. So, please, let's keep relying on each other. And this was fun, Bethany. Thank you.
Absolutely. It was fun. All right. Have a happy diabetes month, and we will see everyone soon. Thanks for joining, everyone who watched. Good night.
Thank you.